Well, hello. Thank you all for joining the webinar today. Today's webinar is on business planning and consolidation. We're talking about version 11, standard version, and for consolidations, our focus is going to be around the consolidation module and functionality as it relates to consolidations in BPC. My name is Beth McBreen. I am a solution director and architect at Simplify Solutions. Simplify is, basically a niche partner around the analytics space with SAP. So we focus on BPC, both standard version, embedded and optimized versions. Focus a lot around the SAP Analytics Cloud solution, and of course, all the integration that goes between all of the analytics platforms. So that's our company. Again, myself, I've been working with BPC for probably about 12, 13 years now, actually designing and implementing the solution. I was a user prior to that, definitely with an accounting and finance background as well. My recent been working a lot more on the Analytics Cloud as well, and seeing both BPC and Analytics Cloud and how the two can work and complement each other together. So working on that. So enough about me, enough about our company. Today, again, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about business planning and consolidation. We're going to focus on the consolidation side. So I know some of you on the webinar today may be brand new to BPC. This may be your first time taking a look at it, evaluating BPC. Some of you may already be existing BPC users and are interested in, are there differences with BPC 11? What may have to be changing, if anything? So I hope to help answer any of those questions. Hopefully we'll get through enough today to give you kind of an overview of some of those topics, as well as give a live demonstration on the consolidation functionality in the tool. So, step one, as far as BPC, it solves mission critical business processes, right? So when we look at BPC being one solution, it handles the planning aspects. So this could be your annual budgeting, and then really kind of peeling back the onion into detailed areas around sales and revenue, CapEx, headcount or salary planning, cash flow, things of that nature, all kind of wraps up within that planning focus. Consolidations, certainly being able to run a full consolidation. So for management, for statutory, having automated intercompany elimination functionality, being able to perform all of your investment and subs eliminations, things along those lines. So all of that, your ownership structures, all of that is kind of bundled up within your consolidation functionality in BPC. Forecasting, you've got, again, your rolling forecast, different scenario modeling, which is very popular because of the ease and the functionality that exists within BPC. And then, of course, aligned with all three of those is the reporting aspect of it. So the reporting and analysis, whether it be ad hoc or variance analysis, so all of that kind of falls in line. So those are really the key areas that BPC supports. And really the value proposition for, planning, forecasting, and consolidation, especially as it relates to the BPC 11, which this version does reside on, and we'll talk about a little bit that when we get to the roadmap section. This version does reside on BW for HANA. So simplified data integration, right? Being able to have the enhancements have been in place for better integration between SAP source systems, between non-SAP source systems. So just trying to simplify the data integration across the board. Of course, reduce total cost of ownership. You've faster time to close. All of these are kind of the value propositions. Certainly on some of these slides, there's a lot of detail. I want to make sure that we can provide these slides in the slide deck to you after the session today. But you can see some of the key ones with BPC 11 that I've highlighted is enhanced visualization. So there is an enhancement to the web interface. So we'll talk about what that means for BPC 11, but being able to have some advanced visualization, being able to pin different charts and graphs to your home page, and utilize that from a user standpoint is pretty nice. High performance, so being able to leverage the, really the power of SAP HANA. In the past, BPC can run complex calculations, but there's always a trade-off with the time that it takes to complete those calculations. So you'll see in a future slide as well, with BPC 11, the focus really is on optimization and performance all around. Cloud ready. So the solution, if you're a non-existing SAP and wouldn't possibly not have an on-premise solution, BPC 11 is cloud ready and integrated, allows us to leverage hybrid planning capabilities with BPC and Analytics Cloud. Has cloud platforms such as the HANA Enterprise Cloud. You've got support with the Amazon Web Services. So all of that, those are kind of a couple of the key differences and differentiators as we move on to the BPC 11 platform. With BPC 11 and BPC in general, this has something that has not changed between the versions. And if you're brand new to BPC, probably one of the biggest tenets around the solution is its ease of use. And that really plays part in the fact that it leverages the Microsoft Office suite, as well as has a web interface. And really, as I mentioned before, and the BPC 11 web interface is starting to be more beefed up for, more advanced functionality, I would say. But tried and true, the Microsoft Excel is where so many finance folks will go to perform their reporting, to build their input templates, and to be able to consolidate their data. So as you'll see through most of the consolidation demonstration today, we will be in an Excel environment. We will be using an add-in to Excel to be able to perform all of that functionality. But what's nice here is you have the capability to use Excel. You can use Word and PowerPoint as well. And PowerPoint for, say, slide decks, for presentations, things of that nature. All of that means, we can pull in this data very quickly to these interfaces. We talked about unified, so that first slide, the planning, consolidation, forecasting, reporting, all of that in one solution, right? Speeds up time to be able to do your planning, to do your forecasting, to have all of that in one spot, to be able to perform management and statutory consolidations, different types of consolidation functions, all within one solution. Having business process flows or activities, being able to collaborate and have a guided step-by-step approach keeps things unified. Having one point of administration to group your hierarchies, to group your accounts or your cost centers together. All of those can be achieved within this one single unified platform. The visualization capability. So kind of looking at this twofold. There's charts and graphs that have been enhanced that are embedded inside of BPC. Driven design by your business users. So you can use all the BPC data, actual plan, forecast. These graphs, as I mentioned before, you can pin these to your homepage on your web interface for BPC. But then really kind of diving in, there's also further visualizations when you leverage SAP Analytics Cloud with BPC to kind of pull together a complete finance story and move it into kind of the analytics world, which is the SAP Analytics Cloud solution. And, from experience and working with some other companies, there are other companies that are starting to take advantage of this hybrid solution and this hybrid scenario. So you may have a corporate finance group, right, that performs and works and lives within BPC and that Excel environment. However, you may have, say, a sales organization, your cost center managers. There may be particular employees that need to provide input to that budget and forecast, but aren't necessarily living in Excel every day. So Analytics Cloud really gives them a nice, easy platform to provide information like, reforecasting units or updating, pricing and things of that nature. So that is one example where then that data, because of that integration, can be pushed back down to BPC in a very effective manner and allow you to complete your overall budgeting and planning. So just a suggestion there. There are companies today that are really taking advantage of this hybrid scenario. Looking a little bit closer, again, a lot of information as it pertains to roadmap and how we got here to BPC 11. As far as recent innovations, kind of the flexibility, things that they're doing right now as they're looking at BPC 11, a lot is obviously kind of on the more technical aspect, being on the SAP BW for HANA. The other piece is the tighter integration with Analytics Cloud because of being able to leverage that hybrid scenario that I was discussing. Looking at different ways to assist with collaboration impact within BPC as well, working with users and working together within the solution. Some of the key things quick, as you look at product direction going forward, some of these, being able to leverage HANA-based calculations to make just those, allocations run that much faster. For example, having that automatic push a logic engine to perform that. They're focusing on some of that. They're focusing on enhancements around the journal capabilities, having predefined consolidation of investments, things along those lines. So definitely continue to keep up on the consolidation functionality and trying to improve and enhance where applicable. And this is, as far as version 11, as I mentioned earlier, this is the key is kind of around the optimized performance, right? Making things move faster, having faster report refreshing. Don't want to have to sit there and wait for that report to continue to refresh. Having your planning calculations that you want to move faster along. So all in all, kind of looking at the overall optimized performance. And kind of the tenets around this is simplicity, openness, modern interface, high performance. So these are all things that I've talked about before, right? So having kind of one product, keeping that simplicity, having the one solution for planning and consolidation, having that close integration and openness with SAP source solutions such as Analytics Cloud or even non-SAP source solutions as well. Having kind of that modern interface, talking about that new homepage, new navigation within the web interface itself, and then really just kind of hitting home on the high performance. And this is just kind of a quick snapshot that I pulled together that is around the timeline and showing kind of where we came from to where it's moving to. There is, a Microsoft version of BPC. There is a NetWeaver version of BPC. Now we're moving into one consolidated version of BPC 11, which resides on BW for HANA. So even as a Microsoft current, if you are a current Microsoft platform, you have the capability. There are some opportunities with on-premise as well, but primarily with the cloud deployment is very attractive. Capability, being able to leverage and have your environment hosted. It's really could be the result of all this is having that managed integrated landscape. Puts it on a secure cloud infrastructure platform. You get all the benefits of being able to leverage kind of that high speed, high performance on that BW for HANA platform. So again, just kind of a quick snapshot of where we came from 10 years ago to where the future is heading as far as one consolidated product as BPC 11. So trying to get through all of that, I do have a couple click-through slides that I want to show you around the web interface of BPC 11. And then real quick, just so for those of you that are looking for some information on BPC 11 and what's new and what kind of functionality exists, Just going to step through a couple of those and then really focus on the last half hour here more on the consolidations and talk through what a day in the life, if I was to close my period, what does that look like? What are the steps involved? How does that actually happen within the BPC solution? So we'll take a look at that. So just to kind of start things off here, BPC 11 has a homepage. So this is based on your individual homepage, so you can pin graphs, charts. You have the capability to take a chart, for example, and open that up and explode it onto your homepage to view it, to work with it. The charts are interactive, right? So I can open this up on my homepage. I can change it from a vertical bar to a line chart, right? So I can make customizations, modifications to my graphs and charts on my homepage. I'm going to move that back to the vertical bar and push it back into my normal tile size. Right? I can adjust, I can make these tiles very small, I can expand them. So again, with the new web interface, it gives more flexibility as to actually customizing a homepage. That might be visualizations, it might be data points, things that will help you as a user in BPC. Also is your activities timeline that they've added. So for those of you that are not familiar, BPC has functionality which we call business process flows. Those turn into your activities, and essentially what this is a workflow, right? These are tasks that are, or activities or tasks that are assigned to you as the user. And you can then identify the process flows is nothing more than a workflow, right? Step-by-step guided approach on how you complete, say, your monthly consolidation process, your annual budgeting process. So any of that can be utilized through a business process flow. And so here as the user, I can see I've got, or I can filter on all of my activities. I can look at just the ones that are overdue. I can see the ones that are in my future that I have to complete. So things like, submitting my forecast. So again, from a user perspective, this can be a nice tool to kind of facilitate the overall process. The the menu bar over here to the left gives you all the different selections that you can do within the web interface. Now, again, just to kind of reiterate, this is only focusing on the web interface. The second half here, I'm going to switch over to the Excel interface, which much of the consolidation will take place in. However, making the web interface more robust allows, for those non-Excel users to make those quick adjustments. And so to be able to have some of these visualizations that in prior versions you weren't able to have, or it wasn't as robust, and being able to really customize what you wanted on your home screen. So things like library, this is where you would have your repository of all your reports and templates, things that you might want to keep within the web interface. Activities, this just correlates to your activities timeline, right? You can have that on your homepage. You don't have to have that on your homepage. The process monitor, it just from an administrative standpoint, if I have a budgeting process, a consolidation process, a forecasting process, all going on at the same time, I can have these laid out as separate processes, and I can monitor where everyone is in their in the process. So again, on the web, and I should probably back up, on the web interface, there is a lot of monitoring and guides for you to view. Process monitor is one. As we focus and talk on the consolidation today, consolidation is another. When I get into the live demonstration, we can talk about, there's a consolidation monitor that makes sure that everything's properly consolidated. There's a controls monitor. And all of these are, stoplight approach, red, yellow, green. Controls monitor, did everything pass controls? Is everything in balance? Does your net cash flows equal your cash on your balance sheet? things of that nature that you want to set up automated controls that you can push a button and run through and ensure that everything looks good before you close and lock down your period for the month. All that happens within consolidation. Administration is everything. So assuming that you're an administrator of BPC, this is where you go to update your dimensions, your hierarchies, set your business process flows. There's a number of different administrative functions that will occur within administration, and this is where you go to for that. And then, of course, there's system reports, which are generally audit reports, things of that nature that will help when you need certain information provided. Typically, this helps when the auditors are requesting information. So within the library, just to kind of do a couple other quick clicks here so you can see, the library has different folders, public folders, private folders. If you have different teams set up in BPC, you can have teams, different groups of individuals that may be, that may have a like security. They may be responsible for one group, right, or group of entities that all have the same rewrite access, for example. Those teams, that is what we mean by team. You can have specific reports or templates that pertain to each one of those teams. But under the public folder, you can see, I again can have a number of different templates and reports. If I want to take the example of a reforecast, I can use the web interface should I want to. And you can see now it's not, I say now because thinking of those that might have already been using BPC, but if you're brand new to BPC too, what's nice is you can actually have a side-by-side. You can have visualization as well as your template and off to your right to be able to. And notice that you also can have things like reports where you can immediately change into a chart, and then you can immediately post those or pin those to your homepage. So again, real flexible in the way that you can start utilizing the web interface. As I mentioned before, the graphs are interactive. This is my little pin button, so I can pin things to my home page. I can go back, you can see this has now been pinned to my home page. I can move it around, as I talked about resizing and things of that nature. I can move things around and how I want them to appear on my home page. If I wanted to go ahead and submit my Q3 forecast, again, I can do this through web. And I can have these templates on my web interface. So you can see here, I have my actuals, I have my forecasts, I have different groups here, I have my gross margin down below. And here I can go ahead and update my sales through my input template that is on the web. So again, this might be a good opportunity for maybe, sales organization or somebody that can go ahead and update this on the web. And then they can just go ahead and click the save data back. It'll tell me that 3 cells will be saved, and then all the reports and everything gets refreshed. Right? So there's no separate, once you make a change and you reforecast, your reports, your graphs, everything updates automatically. It's not where you have to go and run a batch process by any means to complete that and then see a result in here. Okay. Another nice thing, whether you're actually in the web or Excel, is that just the functionality around comments and commentary. So here, you can put a comment around the forecast, whether you completed it or specifically why you changed it or what you did to change it. So comments are widely used in BPC as well. Okay. So I'm going to switch gears now. That really was just an overview of the web interface with version 11 and how some of that, enhanced functionality around the web interface and being able to have the home page and all of that exists, and some of that nice functionality and direct access to your activities, timeline, and everything kind of pulled together. So that's from a web interface. Now I'm going to switch gears and show you and talk a little bit about the consolidation process, right? So now that I have about a half hour, kind of the focus of the presentation, the webinar today really is around consolidations and how that works in BPC. So what I would like to do is just walk through, what it would typically take to consolidate within BPC, and kind of focus on some of the key functionality, key topics here. So what I've done, just to kind of set the stage, is I've opened up my Excel environment. Okay, so for those of you that are brand new to BPC, it leverages native Excel functionality. So you can see here, I'm working in Excel. I have two additional add-ins, one called EPM, one called Data Manager. Okay, both of those relate to, and I'm going to talk through each one of those, but both of those relate to the BPC solution. EPM stands for Enterprise Performance Management. There's a suite of products that fall within EPM, so that's why I get the question a lot, why doesn't that say BPC? Why does it say EPM? That's why. So this is your BPC add-in. And you'll notice, just kind of going from left to right real fast on the main toolbar, this is where you can log on and log off. So as a user, I could be just looking at a regular Excel file. I could come up here, I can log on, I can refresh and pull up a BPC report and immediately refresh in new live data. Okay. So all of that works really nice. I don't have to necessarily go through the web interface to log in to get to Excel. It's just kind of a direct connect. Once you're in Excel, you can connect to BPC. You've got a main section here for reporting. So that's creating new reports, editing reports, opening and saving reports. All of that happens within your reporting section. You have data analysis. This is really focused around ad hoc reporting, being able to create a report and do things like expand, double click, or clicking the expand button, collapsing back up. If there's one particular line I'm looking at that I want to keep and analyze, I can go ahead and just click keep and it'll keep that selection. Or if there's certain lines that I don't want on my report, that I always want them to be excluded, they're member exclusions, I click exclude. So nice functionality to have kind of on the face of the toolbar when I'm doing ad hoc reporting. Undo is like the back button, is the back button, but it's like the back button in Excel. Allows you to go back a step if, say you're drilling down and you want to get back to where you were, you can use the back button to do so. Data input, this is really around your input templates. So, in Consolidations, there may be less of this. I've seen situations in which you have templates to maybe break out intercompany, non-intercompany by trading partner. You may have templates that will store things like your ownership percentages, NCI, or things of that nature, or a couple off the top of my head. Oh, a good one would be roll forward. So as we talk through here around cash flow, being able to provide and create your roll forwards in BPC and capturing that movement or that detail to automatically populate your cash flow, that would be somewhere that it would be a direct entry. And that's really kind of some of the examples that data input would relate to consolidation. Obviously, on the planning and forecasting side, data input is probably more heavily used as you look at planning templates and things like that. Collaboration, definitely used for consolidations. This is the ability to take all of your reports, bundle them up, and create a PDF. You can create an Excel workbook as well. But this is nice for when you have a report, like I have my balance sheet here, and I have this maybe for, right now I'm viewing it for total company, but perhaps I want to run a balance sheet for every company code, right? What publication allows me to do is to kind of cycle through that and publish it in, again, Excel workbook or PDF, but it allows me to do that all at once, besides taking this, refreshing the report, saving it, refreshing the report. So a big time saver when it comes to book publications. Distribution just takes it one step further and emails it out to the individual that would like the book. So collaboration is a big part. Obviously, you have your monthly financial package that needs to be produced. So a lot of times companies will take advantage of book publication to do so. And then tools is just as it relates to consolidations, not as, I guess a couple things here. Offline mode is another way to send kind of singular reports to non-BPC users. You can send it to offline, send it to them. Drill through, this would be a capability. You know, for example, you have your information here for cash and cash equivalents. If I were to click on this cell with the number, I can drill through. I can drill through back to you know, my BW information. I can, or my BW transactional cubes. I can, you know, previously, you know, drilling back to particular T codes, for example. So what this allows the drill through functionality is kind of the automated connection that gets you back to your source data. You don't have to go and log into another system. So that's really when you configure and enable the drill through, you would leverage this drill down here to drill through back to source information. And then you have things like options, and options is really more focused around your reporting options, right? Do I want things suppressed? Do I want them indented, non-indented? Do I want to create dynamic formatting? All of that can be kind of found and worked within your options, right? So that's really the EPM tab. And then real fast, Data Manager, I'll focus on this here in just a minute on some of the key areas, but Data Manager is all about just that, data management. So it's running packages, batch processes to load your data, to run currency translation, to run your consolidation, which may consist of, you know, posting your ownership rules, running intercompany eliminations, producing your cash flow rules, and ultimately a cash flow statement. So all of that happens. So basically what Data Manager does is allows you to kick off those rules, those calculations, or those data imports, right? And we'll talk throughout the session here on what some of those are. So now that you kind of have a little bit of background around the EPM toolbar, around the Data Manager toolbar, kind of stepping back and saying, okay, it's closed. They just finished closing in the general ledger, and now I'm ready to pull in data and consolidate my information in BPC. So what does that mean? You know, first step is I look at it from an administrative standpoint. Typically, you have the owner of BPC, an administrator of BPC, that opens up the period. There's a couple things that happen before data just gets loaded in, right? One would be exchange rates, and I won't open that up here, but exchange rates get either brought in from a source system or either get loaded through means of an input template. Again, I should mention input templates and reports, all as you can see here in Excel. I'm going to show you an example of a roll forward, but all within Excel, right? So you can create an input template in Excel, you can create a report in Excel, same thing. So I may have to copy forward opening balances. So updating exchange rates, step one. Step two, maybe I want to carry forward balances. These may be carry forward my override values. I might be carrying forward journal entries that I posted in the month before. So a number of different things that could be considered a carry forward, or things that we want to bring forward, balances we want to bring forward from the prior month. All of that happens, again, Data Manager, I click Run Package. You'll see I have an option here. I'm going to point out a couple, handful of them just to give you an idea of what some of these do. Given the interest of time, I'm not going to run all of these and sit and wait. I want rather show you kind of walk through the process, but certainly if you have questions on how, you know, each one of these may run, or more specific questions around you know, how it actually is set up on the back end, I'm very happy to answer those offline outside of this webinar. But again, copy opening. So this would be opening balances. So these packages, I'll just go ahead and are all very easy user-based prompts where I can enter in, you know, I want to work with actual is my category, currency, all currencies. Do I want all my entities? Do I only want a few? So I can come in here and it's easy, just kind of point and click. I can select actual, member only on my actual, right? And then I can go ahead and populate all these. I would click next and continue on and then finish, and it would go ahead and bring all my balances. I'm showing you the on-demand way, because the other thing to mention is these can all be scheduled. right? You may not, but as an administrator, and you know, I have worked with companies that some prefer it to be scheduled. Some say, no, you know, we want the controls around it. We're going to keep it as the on-demand. When we're ready, we'll go ahead and then open the period and start doing these processes. So copying opening is one. I mentioned the FX rates, opening the period. So opening and closing periods in BPC. If I go back to my EPM tab real fast, I have a function that we call work status. Okay, work status is the opening and locking of data in BPC, and then everything in between. What I mean by that is, again, as the administrator, I'm kicking off the consolidation process. I may want to start or open that period. So you can have everything locked down prior to that, so nobody makes any mistakes, types in, you know, enters anything into an incorrect period. So you keep it very locked down, except for this particular month that you're going to go ahead and the demo says started. A lot of times we use the term open. But if I use the drop down, you can see here, once the period is all done, everything's consolidated, we would change our work status to locked. That means nobody else can make any changes. But one thing to point out is if you have, you know, some companies have a very centralized consolidation process. Some have a decentralized process. So if your process is more decentralized and you have different regions or different, entities that are responsible for loading their own data, you can have these intermediate steps that allows them to submit the data, right? They load their data, they validate their data, they say they've submitted it after they validated it, and now they're no longer able to make changes, but you still are from a consolidation standpoint. Okay, so this allows you to submit if, you know, rejected and approved really are more when we talk about planning and budgeting. But at the same time, if they submitted and you reviewed and saw something incorrect on their consolidation, you could have these steps in there as well where it would be rejected. Again, it would open back up for them to make changes, so on and so forth. So conceptually, what work status does is allows you to see visibility for one, if you do have a decentralized environment, and allows you to maintain controls where they can submit their information and then it gets locked down. And then, you know, primarily allows you to open a period and close a period. Right. So all of that considered, that would be kind of, you run those steps as an administrator, and now the month is open. So first thing that you're going to do is, you know, kind of if I draw your eyes to the left here, I have an activity pane here. So this would kind of coincide with the web interface that had those activities. I can, again, if I have the link to a web template, I would be in the web. Links to Excel will bring me over here to the Excel interface. So since consolidation is probably primarily done within the Excel interface, we're going to stay within Excel here and look through some of these different activities or tasks that are due. So I could probably spend a whole nother hour talking about integration and loading data and how that works for, you know, master data, transactional data. We don't actually have the time today, but just kind of from a consolidation standpoint, obviously step one, we load the data from the source system. That happens within Data Manager, just like that copy opening package. You come up here and there's, under data management, there's an import package. As I mentioned before, if this is, you know, SAP, you can have integrated master data as well as transactional data. You may have multiple imports. You can have them on demand, which is this here. You can have them run scheduled, right? They could be nightly runs, they could be weekly runs, whatever the, you know, schedule preference may be. But in any event, the data is all loaded through this data manager. So you can decide whether you want it scheduled or you want to maintain control as to when it imports. But either way, data imports and you run the package here, just like I showed you on the copy opening, kind of step by step, you load the data. Once that data is loaded, you may ask the question, well, how do I know that it was all loaded successfully? How do I know, do I have kickouts? Did something not load? What helps me validate that? So again, as the user, I load my data. Now I can come in and I can click on View Status. right, which is also right next to that run package. There it is, my view status. So I click my view status, and now you can see here I had one that succeeded, but I have one that was a warning. So I can click on warning, and I can say, give me some detail here. So any package that runs, you'll get this audit trail, this view status window that has all the different packages that are run, the status and everything. What's nice when it throws a warning, what that means is that data loaded, but it didn't all load. So you need to take a look and see what was rejected. I have a nice little selection bar here where I can see the reject list. I can see, okay, account 7,000 is not currently in BPC. So I need to add that. I either need to add that or I need to map it, right? So I can actually see what the rejected data was in my rejected records, and it gives me some more detail here. So all in all, this is where I can go to, understand whether this data was rejected or accepted. So let's take the assumption that we have a consolidated chart. So in many cases, this wouldn't happen if you are, if you are running SAP and you have more of an integrated master data approach, then obviously this is significantly minimized or eliminated because your data, your master data would run, load in before your transactional data. But let's say for this example, we don't have account as an automated dimension because, we only add accounts maybe once or twice a year. So, I don't know if the cost benefit trade-off may not have been there. So here I have account 7,000. In some cases, companies also, they look at their general ledger accounts and they even create a more consolidated chart within BPC, okay? And they map several GL accounts to a consolidated account within BPC because that's the level that they're going to report off of. Then they'll use things like drill through or other to get to the detail that they want. So in this case, maybe I don't need to add 7,000 to my account dimension, but maybe I just need to map it. So that happens within conversions. So, sorry, go back here. So that happens within conversion files, okay? So you can see here, I loaded my data and I viewed and made sure that, oops, I had one reject. Now I want to manage those data conversions so that I can add the 7,000 and tell it to go to that interest income or whatever grouping that it should fall under. So in this case, again, all through Excel, right? So if you have the access and the authority to do so, typically this might be more of a consolidated function or centralized function, I should say, only to ensure that everything is mapped appropriately. Everything's going to the same spot, but nonetheless, in Excel, easy to get to, easy to manage and work with. So I can click conversion files. I can manage my conversion files. I can give you, just to open up account as an example, just to show you the format, very easy to use, right? I have an external column. I have this is my source system. This is my BPC chart. And that's it. There certainly are wildcards. This doesn't show here, so you don't have to list everything. We use a lot of wildcards, asterisks, question marks, colons to do ranges. So all of that is incorporated, but just wanted to kind of show the layout of the conversion file, the easy access, and being able to maintain that for your consolidation. So typically when everything's loaded, then you will request in local currency. If we're talking about here where we have multiple currencies, typically in local currency, you'll have the data validation where you'll do that review. From that standpoint, you may also be running packages like your currency translation if they'd also like to see it in reporting currency. However, this is only going to get us to a validated balance sheet and income statement. And I should back up, really just looking at from a local balance sheet perspective, that's what it will give us at this point. So you can validate that information. In order to get to an appropriate cash flow statement. So I get asked a lot, well, how does cash flow work in BPC? And can it be automated? And the answer is yes. And so typically it's kind of a two-step, or I should say a three-step process. One is the automated process, which is nice. You take essentially, let me go over here and click and get to an input template here. This is just a sample of PP&E. First step is an automated business rule process. So when you create a batch process, like we may have a run package for cash flow, typically, or it may be all, in this case, it's all grouped within a consolidation package. So we just kind of group all the rules together and say, run my consolidation. But you can break those out. You can keep them consolidated. But in any event, step one is it just takes the movement, right? So for all of your operating activities, for example, it's going to take the movement between the two time periods and post that. That's all assigned. Step two may be some additional pieces where we can't just pull and post the movement here. And PP&E is a good example of that, where I may need to put my CapEx additions or things of that nature onto my cash flow. What roll forward templates do, as you can see here, I have opening and closing, and then I have my different what we call flows, as noted with the F20, F30. So flow 20 is increase. I have my increases, additions, my disposals. And so I have the ability to make adjustments here based on my different fixed asset accounts, right? So if I scroll down to, I have a check balance. So I have like the 59,150. And I can come in here and that helps me determine, putting that amount there, and and submitting it. I'm not going to submit it because as I talk through controls, the controls monitor will actually error out because my PP&E roll forward is not in balance. So that's something that you can assign with controls to make sure that, especially if you have additional users that are responsible for populating this information. But essentially, I would come in here, enter in my information, come up to my EPM, and click Save Data. All right, it's going to tell me when data will be sent. Do I want to continue? In this case, I'm going to say no. Normally, I would say yes, and it'll give me a success window. All right, so that's kind of step two, is because now I can also map these specific amounts that we have just loaded as a roll forward item, map those directly to the cash flow as well. Then lastly, there's typically a cash flow adjustment template, and that allows you to make any non-cash adjustments or other to kind of finalize it. So typically BPC can maybe get you 85, 90%. I have seen in cases where it's 100% automated, but more realistically, 85, 90% automated. And then you have that 10% where you just have to potentially make some cash flow adjustments, especially if you have things like acquisitions or other. Right. And then cash flow is just like the level of, hard to see this. Let me hide these rows here so you can get a little bit more retail. There we go. Cash flow can be as detailed or as summarized as you would like it. I have some clients that have very summarized just to the level of their cash flow statement. I have others that want to see each movement as it pertains to the cash flow. So either or, you can produce that and have the detail roll up to your particular line items on the cash flow. But in any event, those are specific accounts that we create. So we have, cash flow 1,000, which, would be your net income or loss. You've got different cash flow accounts for your movement in receivables, inventories. So all of those are created as separate accounts. And again, you run your package and then your cash flow rules will populate these accounts. Okay. So kind of at a high level, that's how cash flow works and how it's actually automated within BPC. The other piece that we get asked a lot is around the intercompany and how that works. And so let me go over to intercompany reconciliation sheet here. Okay. So in BPC, it's fairly easy. If I open up, I haven't talked about much here, but I have, if I draw your eyes up to the top, is the EPM context pane, right? So these are all my different dimensions and ways that I can slice and dice my data. You can report off of it, plan on it. And so here I can actually pull and take a look at my entity hierarchy, right, and see what I have here. So for example, I have total company, and I have my different regions here: North America, Asia Pac, Latin America, so on and so forth. And you'll notice that at every parent level, parent is what we call North America, you have an elimination, right? So I have US, I have a US elimination, and I have a North America elimination. Right, so at every level I have an elimination, and what happens is the system has predefined logic calculations that knows that assuming that you have an entity and it's tagged with a trading partner, it will automatically eliminate and post to the first common parent elimination company. Okay, so just kind of going back real fast, if I had an elimination between North America and South America, it would go ahead and post down into my reporting, my management reporting elimination here. Right, so when I look at a report on a consolidating basis, I would see North America, these main groupings, as well as my elimination company with the eliminated values. So that structurally is how that works. Again, it's predefined logic that helps determine that. So what's important for your data that comes in is that it has trading partners assigned to it, right? I've worked with clients that don't have that, where you may have receivables that all come in as a non-intercompany. And they have to leverage BPC, either the journal capability or an input template, to take that 100,000 in receivables and break that out of non-intercompany to particular partners. That can be accomplished if you don't have the means to do that in your source system today, if you're not leveraging trading partners, for example. But in this case, just to give you an idea, you can see here where I have an entity's input, the intercompany partner's input, and what the difference is. And obviously, I'm looking in local currency, right? So before I do any sort of intercompany reconciliation, any sort of intercompany matching, I need to get to a reporting currency. In this case, I have euro here. But you can see here now, once I've translated to a reporting currency of euro, this could be a reporting currency of US dollar too, I should be able to see my entity's input, that trading partner's input, and what it's reconciled at. And I should see all zeros. In the event that I don't, this is now gives you the visibility to go back to the source entity and ask them to either make changes. So this happens in two different ways as well. So now we're in the position where, okay, we see that something is not matched up properly. What do we do? Some companies decide to go back to the source system, make that change, and reload the data. Perfectly acceptable. In fact, that's what several companies, or probably most companies, do, is that they will want this change made in the source system. If the books have already closed and you don't have that that availability to do that, you can leverage BPC journals to make an entry for the current month and then have it reverse out the subsequent month. So I do know that that has happened on occasion. I have an example, so let's take that as our example. And let me go back to the web here real fast. Journal capability is found within the web interface. So a journal entry is, just like it has the debit and credit, it's just kind of like a normal journal entry. Let me open this one up here. This has my example. Where you can see I have an ID, it assigns an ID, I have a description. Now it allows me to create by line item, debit and credit, allows me to move it out, you can see here basically moving it out of an intercompany partner and moving it and assigning it an intercompany partner to Great Britain in this case. Okay. So just a couple notes on journals. This would be an example. I know that I've worked with companies that have manual eliminations that need to occur that is not something that they can do with the auto elim process. Most of the time they're using this journal entry template. So again, this can come in handy for all of that. You can make your selections at the top, actual, the time period, the entity that you're booking this for, so on and so forth. So you define what you want as your headers. You define what you want actually in the body of the journal entry. Their security is different. You can have separate security to be able to post, unpost, save, so you have the appropriate segregation of duties. So that's another key reason why a lot of companies will leverage the journal entry template when posting these manual adjustments or these manual entries. Okay, I see I'm running out of time. That's kind of how intercompany works, the overall matching. I talked about journals. I guess real fast where I was at before is the controls monitor. So again, this allows you to see, I can run controls and I can see that who's passed, who's failed on my entity group. So I can see here that, let me show the description so you can see, I can see that Austria has failed. When I highlight it, it tells me why did it fail, and if I expand on this, you'll see it says property, plant, and equipment. The changes in these must be analyzed. So that's telling me I need to go back to that PP&E template. And actually, if I click further, if I open the control results, I can actually see some specific pieces here that need to be updated. So it gives you as much information as you can, and then you could go back to your PP&E template, enter in that information, and then the control would pass. So that's how controls work, the automated controls monitor, I should say, and you define what those controls are. Outside of that, there's the last thing I would say is, as I mentioned before, well, how does all of this get run? We come back to that data manager package to kind of cycle it all. So we've now matched all of our intercompany. We've provided all of our roll forward information. We have rules that are already set up for the ownership rules. All of that typically falls underneath a consolidation package. As I mentioned before, you could split that out. You could have 4 different packages and be able to run them independently. Some companies choose that. Other companies choose to have it all in a consolidation package in which you'd run it, and it calculates. It runs through your translation. It runs through your balance sheet. As I mentioned before, your investments, CTA, calculation of CTA if you're dealing with foreign entities, to all of your, what I would consider your balance sheet rules for investments, CTA, so on and so forth, your current year earnings, retained earnings, everything that's related to your balance sheet calculations, intercompany, cash flow. So all of that really is kind of embedded within one consolidation package. And then, as I mentioned before, you kind of wrap up with producing your reports. So your reports are built in Excel. They can be published using the book publication. And you typically will then produce your financial statement package along that. So I know I'm running over. I guess I will stop at this point. I apologize for kind of running over. I could probably talk for another hour about consolidation. I do thank everyone who has joined today. I'll leave you with a slide with my contact information. Lauren, who is our Director of Marketing and Business Development, her email as well. I apologize, we ran out of time. If you had any questions, please feel free to reach out. If you have questions on BPC 11, if you have questions on consolidation functionality, I'm happy to answer anything offline directly with you. So thank you so much for joining, and have a nice rest of your day.